What's up everybody? Welcome back. Now, the MacBook Pro 14-inch is finally here on the channel, and some may be wondering, why did I get it and how do I plan on using it? Well, I'll start you off with reason number one of why I got it, and that's because simply I've always wanted one. MacBook Pros and MacBooks in general has always been like the cool niche laptop when I was coming up, and always wanted one, but they were just too expensive. And now they still are expensive, but they seem to be more worth it in my opinion. The uniqueness, the form factor, and everything just sticks out about the MacBook Pro, and that couldn't hold even truer today with most Macs in Apple's lineup being powered by Apple Silicon. Now, these Macs, the MacBooks that run on battery, they have excellent battery life, excellent power with the MacBook Pros, excellent displays. The price is still up there, but Apple seems to be stepping it up with the quality. And so far so good with the MacBook Pro 14-inch. I love it, still learning my way around it, but it's been a solid purchase thus far. I had the opportunity to get a MacBook Pro 2 years ago when I purchased my iPad Pro. So it came down to choosing the iPad Pro or the MacBook. And the iPad at the time stuck out as kind of the more challenging choice. The Magic Keyboard had just came out at that time in 2020, and the Apple Pencil definitely seemed interesting in terms of creativity, drawing. I knew I planned on editing videos on the iPad and just having that utility between the Apple Pencil and the Magic Keyboard. So I ended up going with the iPad Pro. And in terms of the price, a MacBook Air or even a baseline MacBook Pro at the time in the summer of 2020 were close to the same price when you had the iPad Pro, especially the 12.9 inch like I have, the Magic Keyboard, and the Apple Pencil. So it was in the same ballpark, kind of like the same territory in terms of price. But I'm glad I didn't get a MacBook Pro at that time, because literally 2020 WWDC, Apple announced that they were transitioning into Apple Silicon in all of their Macs, and first announced the 2-year transition with that Apple Silicon journey. So had I would have bought a MacBook Pro earlier than that announcement, a couple of weeks or so, I would have been stuck with an Intel Mac, because the first Apple Silicon MacBooks weren't released until the fall of 2020. And that would have been a huge disappointment for me. And don't get me wrong, the Intel MacBooks or Intel Macs are still great machines, but the future of the Mac is going the way of Apple Silicon. And within that 2 years that I've had only my iPad on the personal side, I haven't had a laptop. And I didn't realize how much I was missing that until I got the MacBook Pro. Now I'm able to do more laptop things. Things are more organized in terms of the files. The form factor is better when I actually want to plop down and do real work, real typing. I haven't gotten fully into the Final Cut video editing with it, but that'll change when I'm editing this video. So I also want you guys to point out in the comments if you see the differences from all of the LumaFusion videos that I've done on the iPad thus far compared to the Final Cut Pro videos, starting with this one into the future. And video editing is probably the #1 reason of why I bought this machine. The video editing that I've seen just on YouTube, different websites, different forums, can be taken to another level in terms of the power from the M1 Pro and the M1 Max chips, along with the video decoders and encoders on those chips, and the screens. The screens are pretty amazing on these machines. I don't plan on editing HDR content anytime soon, but just knowing that when I eventually do get into that, this screen is capable of being very accurate for HDR content and color accurate. The pops of the colors of the screens are just something I haven't seen before. I was impressed with the screen on my iPad Pro 2020, and that's not the new mini LED screen that's on the current iPad Pros, but that screen, when I first opened the iPad Pro, was just wow. And when I first started using the MacBook Pro, it was even more wow. Looking at some of the content on YouTube, the HDR content, 4K content, the screen just pops. I never looked at a laptop as being a media machine or something that I wanted to consume a lot of media on, but that might change in the future. But another thing that I'm really excited to get into with this MacBook Pro is web development and the beginning of my coding journey, or at least trying to take coding on as a hobby or just a casual learner. Now, it's true, I could have started this on my iPad Pro, but I was kind of put off from that just with the selection of the programs to starting to learn coding. Yes, Playground is on the iPad, but the way the iPad is like bogged down and how websites look on it compared to desktops and laptops, I don't know, I just wanted to start learning on a more traditional computer for the web development and the coding. So you can do it on the iPad, but I feel like it's gonna be a smoother start for me on the MacBook. And then we have Mac OS. Now, Mac OS, I've been kind of thrown into the fire with it. This is my first Mac, so I've only used Mac OS minutes at a time every blue moon, from maybe a friend's Mac, or if I'm at a place and they have Macs, a library or anything like that. But now, sitting with this MacBook Pro, I'm pretty much forced to use Mac OS. And it's pretty cool. Coming from, of course, Windows machines and iPad OS for the past 2 years, it's been a bit of a learning curve, but the more I use it every day, I'm starting to pick up on cool features, and I'm excited to learn more and just to experiment with different things on it. One of the first things that I noticed looking at YouTube videos or macOS tutorials, everybody has their preferences. On most, I guess, iOS, Apple systems, people have their preferences of how they use it, but with macOS, it's a lot more. There's so many details that you can do. People putting the dots on the left side, right side, at the bottom, it disappears. You have the hot corners, all of those things. And it could be a lot to take in if it's your first time using it, but I'm excited to see, one, what it does exclusively, so with exclusive macOS features that Apple has, as well as how it compares to iPadOS, because even though iPadOS gets a lot of complaints, or it can be limited for only reasons Apple knows, it's still a great system. And I'm used to using it, so I'm interested to see how macOS and iPadOS compare and where they're different and the preferences that I like with both of them. And the last thing I'm going to take advantage of with this MacBook Pro is definitely the power. I mean, it has more CPU cores, more GPU cores, more RAM, pretty much everything more than my iPad Pro. And the ports. Now, I didn't think the ports outside of the SD ports would be a huge deal, but having those 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports and the MagSafe is great. This thing charges stupid quick with the MagSafe port. In all honesty, having the MacBook for a couple of weeks, I probably charged it maybe 3 or 4 times, and that's using it almost every day. So if you're good at power management, turning your devices off when you're not using them or you're going to retire them for the night, you'll do good with a MacBook Pro. And this is just the 14-inch, so not even speaking about the 16-inch that has a way noticeably larger battery. So that's probably the best feature thus far that I've been enjoying on the MacBook Pro, not charging it and not having charge anxiety as I have on some of my other devices. And then we have the 4 times storage that I'm going from the 256 gigabytes I have in my iPad Pro to the 1 terabyte of storage that I have on the MacBook Pro. So not really having SSD anxiety or storage anxiety, and being able to work more freely and not grab from my SSD, grab these different SD cards, being able to delete things off SSD cards rather quickly, and to keep things moving. And that's the plan for the MacBook Pro. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, be easy, and peace.